Greetings, Derek here with Denver Yoga Underground. A little bit of context to get us started. Last night in yoga teacher training, a student inquired, should we always be using the Sanskrit names when teaching the asanas? I got some feedback recently that it's actually a form of colonialism. So we had a longer talk at that point. We're sharing some of those points made their way into this video. And to begin, the term yoga itself is a Sanskrit word. So by speaking the word yoga, am I enacting colonialism? Not so much. In my view, it's actually a way of offering respect, paying homage, deference to the mother tongue or mother language or original context of the greater yoga system. And by greater yoga system, we'll talk more about that a little bit down the road. There's more to Sanskrit and more to yoga than simply asana. In fact, we've conflated these two concepts. This is why knowing Sanskrit terms is helpful. We've conflated these two concepts, yoga and asana, to mean the same thing, when in fact, you look them up in the Sanskrit dictionary or study it with any level of depth, you'll know that these mean two very distinct things. So Sanskrit can point to a greater level of depth and nuance in communication, language, and so forth. Again, we'll get to that part a little further down the road. But just to bring it down to a real human, basic, relatable level, I mean, think about your own name. Would you want people just kind of arbitrarily deciding that actually you're not Bob, Jim, Carol, Steve, Lucy, Heather, and just ascribing a new name to you? Probably not. We can hold the same level of kind of respect for the namesake and spirit of each of the asanas. And there's a whole metaphysical layer and description of why the poses are named the manner in which they are, which is the topic of another video, right? So that said, we can use the Sanskrit names as a gesture of respect. That said, I think it's also important to mention the importance of communicating the larger spirit of yoga, right? A system that's intended to actualize our deeper potential, to grant us access to spiritual communion, to live in greater harmony with oneself and with the greater process of life. That the spirit of yoga is also kind of foremost and essential, even more important than using the Sanskrit names and the poses. And there may be instances, requires a little discernment here, maybe instances where the initial namesakes may impede one's ability or receptivity towards the yoga process. So I think of the example of the Buddha, for example. He gave his sermons, his talks, in the local dialect of the time, which was Pali. And so rather than Sanskrit, which was the, lingua franca of spiritual knowledge, right? So everything was in Sanskrit at that point. So he broke the trend a bit. And Krishna also said in Bhagavad Gita that yoga is skill in action. So there may be a moment where we use a little discernment around, translation. Though inside, in my gut, I generally tend to lead with the Sanskrit as a means of learning, because not just the namesakes of the pose, but the deeper principles of yoga practice Sanskrit can communicate them in greater depth. I'm thinking more as a specific example, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, A, written in Sanskrit, and B, there's concepts in here that we don't really have an English equivalent translation for. So to go to the native term of samadhi or gunas or many others is helpful. Prakriti, Purusha. This paints a picture that we wouldn't otherwise be able to access through just strictly using the English terms. And if we're going to be studying yoga, or if we're going to be studying yoga asana, why not start there? Get familiar with the tempo, the meter, the language, so forth. And as we evolve in our study, we can then blossom into more in-depth concepts. And frankly, if you're going to learn any craft, be it woodworking or becoming a doctor or learning how to code computers, you're going to need to learn a different vocabulary or language base. You can't just use our same language and expect to glean knowledge mastery of the respective subject. So yoga is worthy of expanding our vocabulary around. All right. It adds dimensionality to the practice. Thank you for all my liking, subscribing, commenting friends. Joy to share with you. Till next time, peace. Om.